Hi, I'm Tom Henschel.
I'm Sonia.
And I'm Kimberly Lane, and together we're unlocking leadership. We are three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. And every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. Let's get to it. Our first question is from Florence in Minneapolis. And I should say it's our only question for this episode. We've been working on our business launch strategy for 2022. Our team is struggling with identifying the changes and new factors for success in our industry. What tools do you apply to help your clients recognize and engage with what is new? Sonia, what do you got for us on this one?
What do I have on this one?
Change and new factors for success in business, for
Yes,
business strategy sessions. Whoa.
So I like looking at questions that involve how do we engage in new thinking is the way that I'm looking at what she brought up. And the first thing that I think about is we have to sort of provide new and different context, and then we need to tell a story. You know, when we think of how the brain processes information, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you're watching like a story and suddenly you think of other ideas, it's because something has got linked for you in the brain that were not linked before, that causes you to have a new perspective and a new point of view. So one of the things I look at when I think of, launching a new strategy, looking into the new future kind of thing, is I think of context, and the context I think of is either is the changes that are required, or we're looking at the new that you need to require in terms of your specific company for your specific industry. Are you in an evolution? Are you in a revolution? Or are you into innovation? Each one of those involves a different way of looking at things. I remember when I was coaching at Toyota, there was an intro video that was played to those of us who were going to be coaching there so we could get a background about the culture and understand the organization. And so you just think of it as just cars, but the organization goes back 80 years at that time. And they were actually sharing the story of the founder and what industries they were in. And as you looked at it, you realize, oh, they were basically looking for new markets. And so they were both evolving and innovating. Mm-hmm. And doing that allowed them to finally hone in on the automobile market and, move into that globally. So that's my advice, is figure out how you would, and if there's some way to capture any kind of like images or pictures or, a storyboard of some kind, there is something about the way that we connect ideas that really helps out. Even, I'm going to show one last little tidbit. There is an assessment that sometimes people take in business called the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI. And there's exercises that have been shared with all of us facilitators over the years to help people in the room understand each other better. And one of them involves being able to put people together that have certain characteristics that they share. And then they have them actually, so you bring in M&Ms and you bring in colored M&Ms, and you basically give them both the same assignment. Both of you guys are going to have an assignment, and that is you're going to build a house. And so we're going to give you X amount of time, build a house, and then we'll take a look at it and understand that. And the people that were grouped into one area were the people who were very organized and very much like the flow of things and had a very clear action plan. And the other ones were the people that were a little bit more, relaxed and more spontaneous. And it was hysterical, because what happened is when the time was up and you went and looked at each one of them and you took a picture of each one of their version of a house, you could see where it was that the thinking had been very, very different. And then people started asking each other questions. And that led to a whole nother conversation. So it's back to come up with different connections for the brain, and images really go a long way. That's
So are you saying they built houses with the M&Ms?
yeah, they actually on a table, and you just give them a certain section, and you basically say, put together your house. And so it was interesting. The ones that were really organized took and broke out all the brown ones, all the red ones, all the green ones.
Color coordinated, yeah.
So that the brown ones were like, the actual structure, and the green ones with the grass and all that. It was funny, not only in terms of that kind of a process, but also like what each one of their houses look like.
Right.
Because, in one case, they had like a path, they all decided to put a path together, which is interesting. But one was meandering all over the place. And it was like, well, we weren't sure if we wanted this. We didn't want to go completely left. We didn't want to go completely right. And in that process is where like people suddenly go, oh, that's how we think. Oh, that's what it is that's uniting us or challenging us or that whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share the instructions about that, but that's a really fun exercise to do.
That sounds like it. And you hope there's M&Ms still left at the end of the exercise. Everybody be sneaking a couple in there, right?
They might have.
So Florence, I'm going to take a stab. So one, I want to say congratulations for incorporating change into your business strategy and planning, because in today's world, that's really such a big prominent part of our world, and we have to be flexible and we have to anticipate change, and you're already trying to anticipate that in your future success. So just kind of, I always like to work backwards. So as you're trying to figure out what strategy you need to put in place to change, I'd ask, what has changed? So are the customer needs changing? Are your customer facing new challenges and pressures? Are you facing and your team new challenges and pressure? Is economy changing? So like, what has changed that you need to respond to and have a different business strategy? So that's kind of like the business situation. The second one would then be, obviously you're trying to build a new business strategy. So you're going to probably have to change your business strategy so that it points you now in the right direction to anticipate and to solve or to meet that change from your customer perspective or financial perspective. And then the third piece would be the business result sides. Are your business results changing? Are you finding that you've got new goals and objectives, or that you were not meeting your past goals and objectives, so therefore you need to change your business strategy? So it's kind of, I always like to work backwards. So what isn't working? What did you not meet this year because of the impact of the environment or your competition or the industry, and work back from that and determine what do you need to change to meet and solve that problem. Going along with what Sonia said, an innovation, evolution, or revolution, I think this can apply in any one of those areas because again, you're identifying the business situation, the business strategy, and the business results. I do also believe, as Sonia talked about, is you're having that team meeting, that ability to collaborate, and you're going to have different personalities in the way people process information, how people communicate. Some people need time to think before they come up with new ideas. So that whole dynamic is helpful in managing a team dynamic. So that's where I'm going to start, and I'm going to pass it to Tom.
It's great to hear you both talk about this. I came to this question feeling deficient.
Oh.
Florence's question was, what tools do you, the coach, apply to help your clients recognize and engage what's new? And I thought, that's not what I actually do in my work. I'm a leadership coach and a communications coach. So I was looking at this going, ooh, I'm not sure I have anything to talk about here. But I'll tell you how I ended up thinking about it. I ended up thinking about it as a communications issue. Like, I don't think I could help Florence find what's new. I do think what I would talk to Florence about would be, once you find it, how are you going to communicate it? And how many audiences do you have? And who needs to hear it? And do they all need to hear the same thing? And it goes a little bit, Sonia, to what you were saying about tell a story. Like, The leaders of whoever's leading this change, maybe it's the CEO and the executive team, but who knows who it is? Like maybe it's a division head, or I don't know. They got to really get their story together and tell it well. And they need to tell it up and down and outside and inside. And everybody else needs to be able to tell that story too and understand why we're doing stuff. All the literature talks about change, which is what Florence is really focused on. All the literature says how badly leaders under communicate about change.
Yeah.
They say it once, or they write a big company email, and then they think they've done it. Like, right? Okay, I communicated. It's like, that's just the beginning. So whatever Florence is up to and whoever her group is, I just want to say, really, you need to find a way to bang the drum over and over and over till you're sick of it, but make sure that people understand what's going on.
Yeah.
There will be questions from every constituency.
Yeah, you mentioned the why. It comes down to why are we needing to put a change strategy together? What problem are we trying to solve by doing it? Is because we've lost customers, we're not retaining customers, or we didn't meet our financial goals. Why are we doing this? And then also tell the story around why we're doing this, but then ultimately here's the happy ending, right? We all live happily ever after. We love our jobs, we retain our customers, we get our profits, blah, blah. So, but it's that whole storyline. And I think that's definitely part of the change management, if you will. I interpreted the question as, how do we create a strategy? How do we incorporate change into our strategy? But it's all, at the end of the day, it's all the people that implement it, right? And communication is necessary among people. So that's all part of it. Totally agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm completely with you, Kimberly. And one of the things I really appreciated in the question, or at least the way I interpreted it, was the sense that this is a big process, right? They're in the process of identifying change. They're not even they haven't even done anything yet, right? They're just exploring it. And that whole idea that like change is a long thing and you're going to pay attention to it. I just don't know how to, if this is a question about how do they get more creative about finding the changes and exploring their industry. The only other idea that I would have there is, I hope you're well networked. I hope, right? I hope you're talking to people all the time. And I hope you talk to not just your clients and the people who might send you an invoice or whatever, but all kinds of people, professional organizations or whoever it is. And that takes time. I mean, that's really, if people are going to go and do that, they have to have the time to do that. And I'm not sure that we always make time to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you brought that up, because I would say that a function that isn't always funded, but is required when an organization is going to have to face some challenges and changes is, and I'm going to call it insights. It's an organization, it's a group, whether it's one person or three people, and all they do is research and study trends.
My sister-in-law, that was her job.
Oh, really?
For a huge company, and she was all over the world doing insights. Oh, yeah. It was great to watch. It was cool.
So if you don't have somebody in your organization that does that, then there might be organizations out there that specialize in that. So ideally, you would have access to people that have that information about insights, and that can lend itself to putting together, if you will, a story, or allowing for it to be presented in ways that allows you to look at things differently for your industry. Because the only thing that I know for sure in terms of how the brain works is we don't necessarily, the brain is lazy. It likes to go down the path that it normally does. So it doesn't automatically say, let me look for a new way to do this. That's not what the brain does. But the brain can be, if you will, encouraged or tricked into doing that by having different things that start showing up or different ideas that start showing up. Insights would do that. It would say, okay, this is what's happening in China, or this is what's happening in, France, or this is how they took our product and, created into something else. When I was coaching an organization that was involved with space travel at the very beginning of space travel, they were there was so many technologies that they had to create in order for, because in space, how do you think keep things together? So that's where Velcro came from. And so it was like, that was an innovation, back to necessity is the mother of invention. So Florence, there's many different things that one can bring to the table that involve looking at new ways, but importantly is have somebody who can facilitate the insight conversation. I think my last little bit that I want to add that I think is important, and that is probably even, we feel it more now today than ever before, and that is, in general, again, we're resistant to change. We don't want to be changing our traditional ways of doing things and all of that. So the best way to do it is to include us in early. So the more that people are involved in the understanding of it or in the creation of it, there's going to be the back and forth that can happen that then allows people to say, okay, you know what? We've come to the realization that we could go in 2 or 3 different directions. Let's then put together the different teams that are going to come do, look at that, and then they can present back to us. But you have to foment it's like you have to light the fire. You have to light the fire to get them to start thinking in new ways or approaching information so that they can look at new ways from where they're standing right now.
And one thing I want to comment, because I think all that's really important, but as she's doing the looking at the insights and the research piece of it, I think it's important nowadays. There's a lot we can learn from not just looking at our industry, but looking at other industries and what are they doing? So for example, say in healthcare, by looking at, say, the retail industry and seeing there's so much a different change in how they support the customer, whether it's a call center or whether it's a point of service, and how healthcare, so then all of a sudden healthcare hospitals are starting to look at engagement through point of service or telemedicine, so I think it's important to just not only look at your industry, but see what the trends are in some other industries and see if they're adaptable into yours, because that's one way you can get ahead of the game, say, against your competitors. But there's so many ways we can go with this. There's a whole nother concept I think we can talk about, and just how do you effectively navigate change management, right? That's a whole nother conversation.
That is a whole other conversation. It's funny though, listening to both of you, one of the things I kept thinking was, whether you're going to do the insights conversation or Kimberly, what you were talking about, I mean, in either case, people have to be able to shut up and listen. Right? I mean, if you're going to have the insights conversation, you have to take in the information. And I just kept thinking, well, it's interesting. On the one hand, I think that you need to be a really good communicator, but also you really need to be listening and to what's going on, because there's going to be a lot of change. And I think listening is hard in the workplace. So I hate to be simplistic, but I think listening in the workplace is really hard. So.
I'm being open. Not everybody changes as easily as others, and you have to really open your mindset from a brain perspective to be open to change and try to look for the positive of that change, as opposed to, oh, it's disrupting my world, it's disrupting my day-to-day, it's disrupting the way I typically do work, right?
Change.
I wanted to ask you, Tom, because you brought it up, because I agree with you that the listening, when you hear the stories of certain, entrepreneurs or even leaders of large organizations, and it was like, so where'd you get that idea, or how did that happen? And they go, well, I was in this conversation and I heard somebody say. So that means that they were applying their listening skills in such a way that they were hearing something that they had never heard before, and then they were connecting the dots. So I'm just curious, in terms of listening, is there any tips you give anybody for listening at a whole new level that will open them up to learning new things?
Well, oh my, sure. I guess I'll do 2 things. Number one is that story that you just told. Somebody says, well, they said, and so they were listening. I always assume that they're not accurate reporters. People say all kinds of things. And sometimes I was in the room to witness it. And it's like, I heard you report that out. That's not what happened. It's just not what happened. So you're not an accurate reporter, right? So somebody says to me, well, my boss told me blah, blah, blah. And what I think is, that's what you heard. I don't know what the boss would say. I got no opinion in this, but right. I think it's hard to listen in the workplace. I don't think people are very good at it. So one of the things that I would say around listening is repeat it back. You think you know what got said, then just say it back. Here's what I think you told me. And check it out, because you know what? We're not right a lot of the time. We're just not. So that's what I would offer. So listen, I'm going to pull us to a wrap on this one with Florence and her change, because what a lot of ideas. Florence, I hope this was helpful. I really do. I hope it was helpful for all the listeners. If you like what you're hearing, please, you know how to support us. Like us, share us, subscribe. We are Unlocking Leadership askthecoaches.com. We're everywhere that you need us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, wherever. If you've got a question, we would love to hear from you. Reach out to us. We are at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We'd really love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us. Tune in next time, and you're going to get more keys for unlocking leadership.
Bye-bye.